Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week International. Authorities in China's Hubei province say that a fugitive murder suspect has finally been arrested this week, more than 34 years after he allegedly killed a homeless man as part of a twisted plot to fake his own death to escape a bad financial situation. The case began all the way back in January of 1990, when a gruesome discovery was made in the city of Huangshi. Inside of a well-known park, an unsuspecting local found the body of a man. It was clear that he had been murdered, and his head and feet had been removed. Though the condition of the remains understandably made identifying the male victim challenging. At first, it seemed like authorities caught a lucky break. There were documents with the body that appeared to identify the man as a 26-year-old butcher from a neighboring county, whose last name was Feng. There were also a set of keys with the body that were found to open Feng's apartment. However, as police continued their investigation, troubling details began to emerge. It turned out that Feng was in a desperate financial situation at the time of his apparent murder. A series of bad investments and problems with livestock had left him in a significant amount of debt. What also caught the attention of police was the way that the body had been left. It seemed suspicious that someone would go to the trouble of removing the victim's head and feet, only to leave identifying documents with the remains. Speaking of the feet, authorities also wondered why these had been removed when the victim's hands had not. When they dug a little deeper, they finally came up with a theory that explained everything. This body did not actually belong to Feng. Police concluded that Feng had murdered a local homeless man with the same approximate height and build as him to fake his own death and escape his bad financial situation. He had used his skills as a butcher to remove any body parts that might be used to identify him, particularly his feet, because he had been born with 6 toes on his right foot. Soon, a DNA test was done which proved that this was not Feng's body. Unfortunately, by the time authorities figured all of this out, Feng was long gone. He managed to stay on the run for well over 3 decades. That was, until April of 2024. When he was captured by a camera in the city of Wuhan. The camera was part of China's extensive facial recognition system and noticed a similarity between the now 60-year-old man and his younger photos from when he was first identified as a fugitive. Feng was recently arrested and, according to reports, offered a confession to police. He said that he had managed to elude capture all these years by moving across provinces and changing jobs frequently. While the crime had allowed him to escape his debt and start a new life, Feng said that he regretted his actions and that he was relieved that it was all finally over. At the time of this recording, Feng remains in custody and has been charged with intentional homicide. Unfortunately, sources do not mention whether the victim in the case was ever identified. Authorities in the Taiwanese city of Tainan say that they are searching for the suspect behind a disturbing murder this week after a well-known and influential local politician was brazenly gunned down outside of his own home. The incident unfolded just before 5:45 a.m. on July 8th, when the victim, 53-year-old Lin Shi-che, was in the middle of his morning routine. He had just stepped out of his condo building where he lived on Xinlei Road in the city's South District and was apparently preparing to go hiking when he was ambushed by an unknown attacker. Lin had only made it a couple of steps out of his front door and was heading towards a waiting vehicle when the assailant ran around the corner from where he was hiding on the covered sidewalk. He was wearing a black baseball cap, a black hooded sweatshirt, sunglasses, and a face mask, and was armed with 2 handguns. Before Lin could react, the man opened fire, shooting off 11 rounds, which hit him in the head, neck, and chest. The suspect fled the scene immediately afterwards, leaving Lin bleeding out on the pavement. Though emergency responders were quickly called to the scene and he was rushed to the hospital, the 53-year-old was pronounced dead about half an hour after arriving there. So far, police have not been able to identify the shooter. However, they have speculated that the killing was premeditated and likely related to organized crime. Thanks to surveillance footage in the area, they have been able to track some of the man's movements both before and after the shooting. They say that the suspect stayed at a motel in the city on July 7th, checking out roughly 2 hours before the murder. He then hung around the area near Lin's home, covering the last bit of the distance to the crime scene on foot. 2 getaway cars allegedly used by the suspect have since been recovered by police, along with both of the weapons believed to have been involved in the shooting. Unfortunately, it appears that the unknown culprit took measures to cover his tracks, setting the first vehicle on fire with the weapons inside and dousing the seats of the second vehicle with acid. As a result, it's currently unclear if any useful physical evidence has been recovered from either of the getaway cars. Complicating matters further, police say that they have reason to believe that the suspect may have already fled the country. A motive, likewise, has yet to be officially established. However, rumors are already swirling about possible reasons behind the ambush. Lin was a well-known and influential member of the Democratic Progressive Party in Tainan, and was also a chairman of the city's Fishermen's Association. Perhaps the most popular rumor that has surfaced so far is that the 53-year-old was killed following his refusal to help transport drugs on behalf of a criminal organization. Another theory is that the crime had something to do with an ongoing political scandal that Lin was embroiled in. Prior to his death, Lin had been accused of intimidating a Tainan city councilor into voting for a member of his party during the 2022 council election for president and vice president. The 53-year-old was cleared of any wrongdoing in April of this year. However, the decision was appealed, and he was set to return to court in the near future. It's important to point out, though, that neither of these rumors, nor any others, have officially been linked to Lin's death at this time. Following the news of the brazen murder this week, government officials announced a nationwide crackdown on organized crime and corruption. They also said that they would be stepping up the investigation into the shooting, declaring it, quote, a major emergency, and stating that the Ministry of Justice and National Policy Agency would be teaming up to identify the suspect and any possible accomplices as soon as possible. The family and friends of a Chilean mother are demanding justice and answers this week after she was brutally murdered in her own home while defending her young daughter from a neighbor with a disturbing criminal history. The horrifying incident unfolded at around 4 a.m. on July 3rd, when the 29-year-old victim, Camila Rojas, and her 5-year-old daughter were at their home in the city of La Serena. The pair were fast asleep in bed when suddenly they were awoken to an unimaginably awful situation. Camila's neighbor, 40-year-old Francisco Novoa, had broken into her property while under the influence of drugs and alcohol. While his exact intentions are still unclear, we do know what allegedly happened next. Novoa attacked Camila and her daughter with a knife. According to police, the assault was extremely vicious. It appears that Novoa first attacked the 5-year-old, stabbing her multiple times in the back. The girl likely would have been killed if it wasn't for the last desperate acts of her mother. Camila put herself between her daughter and her attacker and fought with everything she could. She saved her daughter's life, but sadly, in the process, she was killed instead. She was stabbed at least 97 times. Following the brutal killing, Novoa reportedly fled the scene, though he was quickly arrested after apparently being turned in by his own family. While Novoa currently remains in custody and is now facing murder charges, friends and family members of the two victims are demanding to know why he was out on the streets in the first place. According to local media reports released in the aftermath of the killing, Novoa has a lengthy criminal history, one which includes previous violent incidents. Perhaps the most disturbing among these is an attack against another woman, which allegedly took place in the fall of 2020. During that incident, Novoa was accused of running up to the 34-year-old female victim in the middle of a public road and slamming her into the staircase of a nearby building. The 40-year-old allegedly covered the victim's mouth so she couldn't scream, then began to grope her. Thankfully, she still managed to call for help, prompting Novoa to flee. At the time of this week's incident, Novoa still had yet to face trial for that crime. Camila's friends and family members say that the whole thing is an extra gut punch because the young mother had left her home in Hualpen and moved across the country to where she was killed in search of more promising job opportunities and a better life for her and her daughter. They are now remembering the 29-year-old as a brave, hardworking, and loving mother and friend who was always willing to help those around her. At the same time, they were calling for the maximum penalty for her alleged killer. The situation is still developing. Representatives from England's Hertfordshire Police say that a 26-year-old British Army veteran has been successfully captured this week, following a nearly 24-hour-long manhunt after he was accused of killing 3 women from the same family. The awful situation began shortly before 7 p.m. on July 9th, when residents on the normally quiet cul-de-sac of Ashland Close, located in the town of Bushey, began to hear disturbing noises coming from one of their neighbors' homes. Ear-splitting screams were coming from one of the residences, which several people quickly recognized as belonging to a woman. When police were called and arrived in the area minutes later, they found 3 female victims in the same home. All of them were suffering from extremely serious injuries and were later identified as 61-year-old Carol Hunt and her 2 adult daughters, 28-year-old Louise and 25-year-old Hannah. Sadly, all 3 women later succumbed to their injuries. While little has so far been revealed about the circumstances that led up to the chilling crime, within a matter of hours, police had announced that they were searching for a suspect. That suspect was Kyle Clifford, a 26-year-old man who had previously served a short stint in the British Army. In addition to asking for the public's help in providing any information about Clifford's whereabouts, authorities warned that he should not be approached as he was likely armed with a crossbow. Currently, it has not been revealed whether a crossbow was used in the attack on the 3 victims. At the time of this recording, Clifford was only arrested about an hour ago, with authorities tracking him to the Lavender Hill Cemetery in the town of Enfield. The 26-year-old was reportedly removed from the location on a stretcher shortly after it was swarmed by police. Unfortunately, due to the recency of this development at the time of completing this segment, we don't know too much more about the incident. However, it has been revealed that the 3 victims were the wife and daughters of BBC 5 Live racing commentator John Hunt. It's also been alleged that Clifford was known to the family and that the attack was targeted. The situation is still under investigation, and we'll be sure to bring you an update as the story develops. Authorities in the South Korean province of Gyeonggi say that a 17-year-old boy is dead this week, several days after he allegedly attacked a fellow student at an after-school academy they both attended, and then jumped from the roof of a nearby building. The disturbing incident took place at around 3:40 p.m. on July 1st, when the suspect and the female victim, both of whom are 17 years old, were at a hagwon in the city of Ansan. For those unfamiliar, a hagwon is a kind of for-profit private educational facility that is popular across the country, which can perhaps best be described as like a very extreme tutoring center. Anyway, the 2 teens were apparently in the middle of what was otherwise a normal afternoon at the facility when the female victim went to use the bathroom. She was allegedly followed there by the male suspect, who proceeded to attack her with an 8-inch long knife. According to reports, the attack was quite vicious, leaving the girl with serious injuries to her face, arms, hands, and chest. Despite this, she managed to survive. After fleeing the scene, the 17-year-old boy went to a nearby apartment building, jumping to the street below. He was initially rushed to a hospital alive, though was pronounced dead on July 4th. Currently, police say that they are still investigating the situation, but that so far the whole thing is fairly mysterious. According to the latest available reports, while the victim and suspect knew each other, they had almost no personal connection outside of attending the same school and tutoring center. After the attack, the 17-year-old girl apparently told police that she knew almost nothing about the suspect. At the time of this recording, police are still working to uncover any kind of possible motive. People across the African nation of Ghana were led on quite the emotional roller coaster ride this week, after what started out as a celebration for a record-breaking achievement turned into a police investigation when it was discovered that the man behind the alleged feat had apparently been lying about the whole thing. It all started earlier this year when Ghanaian chef Ebenezer Smith, also known by the nickname Millennium Chef Smith, set out to accomplish an ambitious goal. The celebrity cook announced that he was going to attempt the Guinness World Record for the longest continuous cooking marathon done by an individual. In order to support the record, Smith raised funds from a number of sponsors. The main one ended up being Amadia Shopping Center, a mall located in the capital of Accra. The company not only provided the facilities for the stunt, they also gave him financial support. The whole thing kicked off on February 1st and was widely publicized across the country. It didn't end until more than a month later, with Smith announcing he had shattered the previous record and cooked for a whopping 802 hours and 25 minutes straight. This week, the story went viral again in the African nation when Smith held a press conference showing off the certificate for his achievement, which he said had just been given to him by Guinness World Records. The announcement was met with excitement and congratulations from people all over the country. There was just one problem. Apparently, Smith made the whole thing up. The shocking news was reported just a day later when an official spokesperson for Guinness World Records came out and said that Smith's claims were fraudulent. Not only had they never given him any certificate, they said that they had never even received an application that he was attempting to break the marathon cooking record. Things got even stranger when shortly after this revelation, it was announced that Smith had been arrested. According to local media, police took Smith into custody after his main sponsor, the Amadeus Shopping Center, learned about what had happened and accused him of defrauding them. They say that the chef bilked them out of the equivalent of about $23,000 US between the resources they provided him and the direct financial support for his fake record attempt. At the time of this recording, Smith has not been officially charged with any crimes, though it appears that he has admitted to deceiving his sponsors and the public. One local media report we came across stated that Smith confessed that he had fabricated the Guinness World Record stunt as a way to make fast money. However, it's not clear if this has been confirmed. In retrospect, it seems like Smith's claims probably should have been put under greater scrutiny from the beginning. The previous record that he claimed he beat, which is still the actual official record at this time, is held by an Irishman named Alan Fisher, who cooked for 119 hours, 57 minutes, and 16 seconds. The record before that was held by a Nigerian woman named Hilda Bachi, whose record was 93 hours, 11 minutes. That means that Smith claimed to have dusted them both by about 700 hours. The situation is still developing. Representatives from the Philippines National Police say that 2 ex-cops are in custody and are awaiting charges this week after they were accused of masterminding the chilling murders of a former beauty pageant contestant and her fiancé, a crime that authorities now say was the result of a land dispute. The situation began on the afternoon of June 21st, when 27-year-old Geneva Lopez and her 37-year-old fiancé, Yitzhak Cohen, left their home in Tlac province to attend a business meeting. They never returned, and from that point on, friends and family members were unable to get in contact with them. A search was launched for the couple, one which quickly took a dark turn when their silver Nissan Terra was found early the following morning along Cojuangco Road in the village of Cristo Rey. The SUV had been abandoned and set on fire, and there was no sign of Geneva or Yitzhak anywhere. After digging into the missing couple's personal lives and retracing their steps, investigators with the National Police's Criminal and Detection Group learned about Geneva and Yitzhak's business meeting on the day that they went missing. They were supposed to go and speak with a former police officer named Michael Guiyang about a piece of land that they were interested in. When investigators spoke with Guiyang, he reportedly admitted to the meeting on the afternoon of June 21st, but claimed that it was nothing special. He had previously pawned the land to Geneva for a loan, but now he had found a buyer to pay her back. He said that the whole interaction was very short and that they all went their separate ways afterwards. However, it turned out that this couldn't have been further from the truth. Roughly 2 weeks into the investigation, National Police were approached by a witness who said that he had valuable information about the case. He said that he knew what had happened to Geneva and Yitzhak because he had taken part in covering up their murders. This witness, who currently has not been identified by name, told detectives that Geneva and Yitzhak had been killed by Guiyang and another former police officer friend of his named Romel Abuzo. The pair had allegedly lured the couple to the business meeting with the intention of shooting and killing them. The witness said that he didn't take part in the actual killings, but that afterwards he was instructed by Abuzo to drive the victim's SUV to a remote quarry near the town of Capas. He said he only realized what he had gotten himself into after he arrived and saw Geneva and Yitzhak's bodies in the back of their vehicle. By that point, he claimed he was too terrified to go against Guiyang and Abuzo, so he just followed instructions. Once he got to the quarry, other accomplices buried the bodies while he set the SUV on fire. As for why all of this had happened, the witness stated that it had to do with the land deal that Guiyang had already told police about. However, the situation was much different from what he claimed. Apparently, Guiyang had pawned the land to Geneva for money, but he couldn't afford to pay her back. She wanted official possession of the land since Guiyang had provided it as collateral, but he refused, leading to a dispute. On June 21st, Guiyang set up a meeting stating that he had a solution. He had found a buyer for the property and would instead be able to pay her back. Of course, there was no buyer. Instead, Abuzo allegedly posed as the person that would be giving the couple their money, and when they arrived, he and Guiyang shot and killed them. After receiving this information, police traveled to the quarry that the witness had told them about. Sadly, on July 6th, both Geneva and Yitzhak's remains were recovered there. While few additional details have been released about the pair at this time, it's said that Geneva was a 2023 contestant in one of the country's oldest national beauty pageants, and Yitzhak was an Israeli national. The couple were planning to get married in the near future. Following the discovery of the bodies, Guiyang and Abuzo were both arrested and are now expecting to face murder charges. 3 other people have also been taken into custody, including the witness and the 2 people who allegedly helped to bury the victims in the quarry. Police say that they believe at least 2 additional suspects took part in the crime, though currently they remain at large. The situation is still developing. Representatives from Australia's New South Wales Police say that they are investigating the aftermath of an absolutely devastating tragedy this week, after 3 children were killed and 4 others were injured in a raging house fire, a blaze that was allegedly set by the victim's own father. The disturbing situation began just before 1 a.m. on July 7th, when a man named Jared Hawkins was jolted awake by a loud pop from outside his home in the Sydney suburb of Lalor Park. Recognizing the noise as breaking glass, Jared was initially worried that someone was breaking into his car, so he decided to go outside and investigate. Sadly, the reality was much worse than anything he could have imagined. Immediately after stepping outside, Jared saw flames pouring out of the windows of one of his neighbors' houses across the street. He knew the people that lived there. The place was home to a young couple and their 7 children, at least one of whom was friends with his own daughter at school. The next thing he realized was just as unsettling. No one was outside, meaning that the family was still likely in there. Without hesitation, Jared ran towards the blaze. Upon making it across the street, Jared tried the front door of the home, but found that it wouldn't open. It didn't seem to be locked, but for some reason it was still resisting him. He would soon discover the chilling reason why. The father of the family, 28-year-old Dean Heisman, was allegedly holding it shut. It's now believed that he not only started the fire in the first place, but was trapping his 29-year-old wife and their 7 children inside and refused to let them leave. It's not clear when Jared actually figured out what was happening, but in the meantime, he was apparently able to body check the door open. Even after being met with a wall of smoke so thick he couldn't see in front of him, he continued inside, feeling his way around and following the sounds of the screaming victims. Over the next several minutes, he would pull 3 boys, ages 4, 7, and 11 from the inferno, as well as a 9-year-old girl. He reportedly did this one by one, risking his life each time to go back into the burning house to try and save more people. Jared also alerted other neighbors, who quickly jumped in to do what they could to help the children and contact authorities. Firefighters were quick to arrive at the scene and began battling the flames and continuing the rescue efforts. 2 more boys, ages 2 and 6, were pulled from the house, along with the 2 parents, later identified as Dean Heisman and his partner, 29-year-old Stacy Gamage. It was around this time that authorities also began to realize the dark truth behind the situation. As they were desperately trying to get everyone to safety and extinguish the blaze, Heisman was allegedly doing everything within his power to stop them. He reportedly fought with emergency responders, pulled his wife and children back into the burning house, and could be heard yelling, quote, "Leave me here to die." Other heartbreaking details were soon provided by the victims, who were first to be rescued from the fire. One of them told the witness simply, quote, "Dad tried to kill us." As the situation was finally brought under control, 6 of the family members were rushed to a local hospital. Sadly, the 2- and 6-year-old boys who were the last to be removed from the home were pronounced dead at the scene. A baby girl who was less than a year old was also found already deceased inside. Currently, the situation is still very much under investigation, and no clear picture has really yet emerged about how and why the tragedy unfolded. The few details that have come out have not been confirmed, though are nonetheless incredibly disturbing. It's believed that before trapping his family inside their home, Huangshi used some kind of accelerant around the residence to make the flames spread faster, and that the initial fire may have started when he threw a flaming pillow at Stacy. One thing that seems almost certain, though, is that the situation could have been far more deadly if it weren't for the actions of Jared Hawkins. Despite this, in interviews after the incident, he rejected being called a hero, stating in part, quote, "I didn't realize what was happening. I just heard the kids crying and instincts took over. I was in the right place in the wrong time. I was in a situation where I could help." At the time of this recording, Stacy, along with the 4 of her children that Jared rescued, are all said to be in stable condition. Stacy herself has since been discharged and was allowed to briefly visit the burnt-out remains of her home 2 days later to try and come to terms with what had happened. Accompanied by other family members, she could be seen gathering up toys, cards, stuffed animals, and other tokens of love and support left by neighbors and community members who were also still struggling to process the tragedy. Several who were interviewed by local media outlets said that the family appeared to be very nice, lively, and outgoing prior to the incident. Police have added that Stacy and Huangshi were together for approximately 10 years, appeared to be in the process of getting married, and that Huangshi had no prior serious criminal history. The only other thing that's been revealed is that officers were reportedly sent out to do a welfare check on the children at the property approximately 2 weeks ago. However, no information has been shared as to why this was the case. As for Dean Huangshi, it's been reported that he is currently in the hospital under police guard. He suffered serious burns and remains in an induced coma, with doctors saying it's unclear if he will survive. Police say that right now no charges have been laid, and that will likely be the case until the 28-year-old regains consciousness. The situation is still developing. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.